a census, a population and housing census will rank very highly on its to-do list, at least in the first 3 months or 6 months. I'll be truly surprised if it happens. Because remember, we have the big elephant in the room, which is the subsidy regime. That is what I believe they would want to tackle. But let's see what happens. So again, no surprises, it's being postponed, and we wait to see when it will be rescheduled.
Hmm. And there was talk about some software that was to be utilized for this. Now, if this census is has been postponed and we're not too sure of the date, is there any worry that perhaps this software could be obsolete at the time that it's actually scheduled for?
Okay, so software shouldn't become obsolete within a year or two.
Mm.
Worst case scenario is you have to upgrade the software. Now it also depends on where they're getting software from. But Nigeria is a land of interesting possibilities. I will not be surprised to read a ridiculous statement or story months down the line suggesting that that software can no longer be used and they need to get a different software. I won't put it beyond our guys.
All right.
Mr. C, just a quick question to ask here. Now, many Nigerians have looked at this and said, okay, now this has been postponed. Well, it's indefinite. We don't know when it's going to happen, and there have been questions over the funding for the census, or what's going to happen. Will new funds be released for the census? Have the funds been withheld? What exactly would happen in that instance?
Okay, so already part of the funds have already been released. Some sort of training has already taken place. Now, what is left is for a fresh round of funding, specifically for the training of the enumerators on the devices that are in country and will still arrive. Now, where that money will come from and what priority is given to it remains to be seen because, like I said earlier, the incoming administration has a lot to deal with. And if I were the incoming president, this would not be very high on my to do list, at least within the first 6 months.
Hmm.
No, it won't.
All right, all right. Okay, then let's move on to our next story here. Now, the chairman of Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabi, on Saturday said the mission in Egypt was making arrangements for the payment of visa fees for stranded Nigerians at the border of the country. Now, the federal government had on Friday called on relevant authorities along contiguous borders of Sudan to create a humane condition for about 7,000 nationals, including Nigerians, to have unfettered access to their various destinations.
Okay, so thank you, Aya. So, first things we know that the federal government has taken steps to evacuate stranded Nigerian citizens within Sudan to Egypt.
Mm,
Now we know that a lot of them have been unable to cross the border because they haven't paid the requisite visa fees. We also know that the Nigerian government has made plans to pay those visa fees on behalf of the people who are at the border. Now, there's another group of Nigerian students who are still stuck in their various universities and outside the embassy in Sudan. And they're claiming that the bus drivers that were contracted to take them to the border maintain they have not received any money, which is a bit strange given the fact that the government has released or reportedly released the sum of 1.8 million US dollars. Now, the bigger question is if this amount of money has been spent, why are the drivers still maintaining they haven't received the money? Where exactly is the money? And it is important that this 72-hour ceasefire period that was announced by the warring factions in Sudan has either elapsed or will soon elapse. It is extremely important we get all our citizens who desire to leave Sudan out of the country. There are some Nigerians who don't want to go. They want to ride it out because they have investments there. They've probably grown up there and they're not sure what Nigeria has to offer them. So it's important that Nigeria resolves this. And government to government, they could speak to the Egyptian government on a diplomatic level. Open your borders for the Nigerians. From sovereign to sovereign, we undertake to pay the money so that all the Egyptians have to do is take a record of who exactly crosses with details and then forward the bill to the Nigerian government, and the Nigerian government will be
Speaking about this, Mr. C, what does the UN say about this? Because people fleeing from Sudan are refugees. Is it reasonable to expect them to actually pay for visa fees?
are they refugees?
Well, they're fleeing from war.
Well, that's the thing. There's no what there's been fighting, so we have to be a bit clear. There have been hostilities, there's been fighting, there's been shooting, but has there been a war declared? Remember, every war is declared.
Mm.
So the question now is, what is going on in Sudan? Have we gotten to the point where it is a civil war?
But the thing is, do we have to wait till Sudan actually comes out and says, you know what, we're actually in the middle of war?
Because
At
this,
what point
right?
do we reach, or do we get to before we can see that what's going on here? It looks like a duck, it looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. Is it a duck?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Ayo. There must be a point where everyone, neighbors, even people in Sudan, decide, okay, look, this is no more fighting or a quarrel. This is not a full blown war. But to answer Zibby's question, the issue of refugees will only kick in when there's a war. When there is a war that it has formally been declared,
Mm.
it's then the issue of refugees starts. Because if there's no war, where do you get the concept of refugees from? What are they fleeing from?
I would think they're fleeing for their lives, considering people are losing their lives
All
in
the
Sudan.
shooting going on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting situation. All right, let's go on to WhatsApp. We have some messages coming through. Poppy says census is expected to hold every 5 years for economic planning, but amazing that it's only happened once in 17 years. I subscribe to the postponement because it will allow the federal government plan ahead and put so many things in place, that is security of lives and property, to ensure its successful hosting. Okay, thank you, Poppy. I was reading something from the International Labour Organization's website, and it did say generally they're conducted once in 10 years. So perhaps maybe different nations would set a time frame for their census. Daisy says, has anyone cited the already bought equipment for the census, or even confirmed purchase was made in the first place? Okay, let's see what this message says. Abbas says every country with citizens in Sudan is facing difficulties with evacuations. People within Sudan are complaining of outrageous fees charged by drivers to take them to the Egyptian borders. Unfortunately, when there is crisis, some people try their best to profit as much as they can. Let's move on to Punch. Now, agriculturists are telling the government to establish egg powder factories in a bid to tackle the egg glut that has been ongoing in parts of the nation. Now, he said there's an immediate need and a permanent solution to avert total collapse of the poultry sector. And he says the government must be proactive in solving problems which have almost crippled the sector.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So, as the story rightly points out, a lot of Nigerians have gone into the poultry business, and the resultant effect is that there's the supply of eggs outstrips the demand for eggs. So we then have a situation where if certain eggs are not bought within a period of time, they waste away.
Mm.
And when we had the crisis with the Naira redesign policy, a lot of poultry farms made huge losses. Now, the suggestion here is we should find a way to extract egg powder, which we can then export to foreign nations which need them for their food industries, for their bakeries, and their confectionaries. And so far, it would appear that there's only one company in Lagos that is into egg powder extraction. And this story is recommending that a lot more should be done in this regard, and it could serve as another source of foreign exchange earnings. And people are being encouraged to toe that line. So the question now is, how does the government help the private sector? How does they create an enabling environment in terms of land, in terms of giving them duty-free access to imported machines? Because I want to believe that the machines that will extract this egg powder are not locally made. They'll probably have to be imported. So are you going to give them tax breaks? Are you going to give them import free? Are you going to allow them to bring the machines in import free? Are you going to give the businesses tax breaks for tax holidays for 3 5 years so they can stabilize, such that they can then employ more Nigerians who then pay personal income tax? The company that is thriving pays company income tax, and everyone around is a winner. So, questions, questions, questions. Let's see what happens.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Let's take a quick break. We'll continue the conversations in just about a minute. As always, we love it when you send your messages and let us know what you're thinking. I see them coming. 0809 440 981. Stay with us.
Question. Story number four is interesting.
It is.
Story number four. Very interesting.
Let me see.
His achievements.
Oh,
What was I saying, Zibby? That I want to see. Okay.
Mr. C.
I would actually love to see the whole thing. Just take a look at everything one by one by one.
91 pages over 8 years,
Colgate adverts. Where did this come from? Where did this come
Register
from?
as a First Money agent. Visit the First Bank branch closest to you. First Money, close and simple. You first. First Bank. Lagos, my Lagos, never changing in terms of people, never changing in terms of the traffic. Even though the buildings have changed, even though things have changed from the old to the new, a city that never sleeps, a city that has it all in one. Lagos, the heartbeat of Africa. What's your dream? Bring it to Lagos. Chances are you may actualize your dream. My name is Shego Ali. My Lagos.
This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. It's Ayo, Zibby, and Mr. C, our analyst this morning. 0809 440 981. That is the WhatsApp number to be a part of the conversation.
That's right. All right, let's move on quickly to our next story here. Very interesting one. Now, the presidency has released a long list of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration's achievements spanning his 8 years of rule, highlighting specific successes from a wide range of sectors. Now, a statement by Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, said the 91-page document containing the achievements of the administration was a one-stop shop, adding that it was compiled by the Presidential Communications Team. Mr. C, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. This is very interesting news, and personally, I would want to see this document when it's eventually released, because from the story, it says it's been put together. It's one thing to put it together; it's another thing to release it. And I'm sure that the millions, if not tens of millions, of Nigerians who would actually want to see in print what these achievements are. Now, I recall that on several occasions, the president did promise not to leave Nigeria the way he met it. And I dare say he's delivered on that. He's delivered on that promise. Now, if you take any area of our national life, let's take security. Prior to his coming into office, the worst incident that had happened was a Chibok abduction, for which several of those girls have still not been reunited with their families. And the way it sounded at that point in time, it was as if the worst thing had happened. But sadly, 8 years later, abductions have literally become part of our daily existence. All parts of the country. There's no part of the country that is isolated from abductions. So if you're not having abductions from terrorists, you're having it from organized criminal groups. Now, also on security, prior to his administration coming into office, it was extremely rare for army installations to be attacked. 8 years later, it appears to be the norm. Let's go to the economy. We all know how much a dollar was in 2015. In 2015, I dare say there were a lot of middle level, middle income Nigerian families that could afford to buy brand new cars, that could afford to go on holidays, that could afford to put down money for houses to purchase their own homes. That is not happening anymore. It's now more expensive. The dollar to naira rate is now truly ridiculous. Let's come down to the ordinary man. How much was a bag of rice in 2015? 758K? How much is it today? How much is gari? How much is plantain? How much is beans? How much is sugar? How much is salt? How much is maize? In 2015, I dare say, irrespective of your financial status, you could at least afford comfortably to eat 2 square meals a day. Today, that is not the case. Today, more Nigerians are in multi-dimensional poverty. Agriculture has taken a big hit. So it's really, is it the roads? For 8 years, you haven't completed the Lagos Ibadan Expressway. The second Niger Bridge was hardly opened up for use during Christmas without the access roads being ready. So I know the defenders of this administration will come out and say he has done a lot. Put it in writing. Let us see. Because even the spokesperson, Mr. Additional, said that it was being put together because a lot of Nigerians were not aware of the achievements. I dare say on that point, he's actually correct. And that is a failing of his communications team, his media team. If you're actually achieving anything, we should know about it. But I look forward to seeing this document if it is released, and I will read it.
Now, speaking about cost of living increases, but these are not problems that are peculiar to Nigeria, though, right? We've seen situations all across the world where people are protesting about an increased cost in their living. We've seen health workers go on strikes as well. So, is this a solely Niger? Can we say it's
Okay.
solely a Nigerian problem?
Zibby, in 8 years, you've gone through 3 depressions. 8 years. Show me another country in the same period has gone through 3 depressions.
I think countries are still recovering, but that's just my opinion.
So some countries recovered from the initial one that was around that 2015-2016 period. I'm not sure there's any country, and none comes to my mind readily, that's gone through 3 economic depressions. Inflation in Nigeria has been steadily increasing month on month for at least the last 15-20 months. Steady. And that's why each time there's an MPC meeting, the MPR rate is increased. We've seen a number of Nigerian businesses fold shop or reduce operations, scale down operations, or worse still, some of them move to neighboring countries. So what are the indices? Where are these achievements located? What are these achievements? We would like to know.
All right, let's go on to WhatsApp to look at some of the messages coming through. Cisco Delgado says the war in Sudan is politically masterminded by certain forces in a power tussle. And Jerry says the Egyptians just want to cash out on us. And you don't need to show us in writing. We want to experience growth. And this is in response to this 91-page document. Dami from Ikorodu says the problem with eggs isn't that there are too many. The problem is that too many people are too poor to afford eggs. Okay, Deepo says supply of eggs can never at this time be more than the demand. The problem is the price of eggs is outside the budget line of an average Nigerian. Hence, government must look out for a way to intervene to reduce the cost of managing poultries, to help the price of eggs in the market, to make it more affordable for Nigerians. Last week, we had a poultry farmer on Lagos Talks, and he did share some insight into that conversation. If you missed it, you can find the live stream. It's up on our YouTube channel just to keep up with that conversation. But let's move on to the next headline. This one comes from Vanguard. Now, retirees of Nigerian Railway Corporation are urging the federal government to include them in the corporation's monetization of staff quarters program.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. Now this is we need to go back. We need to go back in time. Now, sometime in 2004, sometime in June 2004, the federal government issued a monetization policy for all civil servants and public servants. And it was to the effect that it no longer wanted to be saddled with the responsibility of providing housing quarters or accommodation for its workers. So it decided to monetize that housing portion and give the civil servants the money. And this became effective third quarter 2004. Now, for whatever reason, the NRC, which is the Nigerian Railway Corporation, started that policy, but removed the housing segment, the housing portion. And senior railway workers who retired in 2004, but who were still eligible for the monetization policy, have still not received the benefits. And they now allege that some elements within the Federal Ministry of Transportation, the NRC, and the two in-house railway unions are colluding, or apparently want to collude, to sell the existing staff quarters and split the proceeds amongst themselves. And they're insisting that that should not be the case, and that the 2016 National Industrial Court judgment, in which it was clearly stated that they should benefit from the monetization policy, should be adhered to. And they're saying that even if there is an appeal, they should proceed with that appeal rather than continue to frustrate them. Now, the long and short of all of this is that money is about to be shed, and some people are afraid they will be left out. Now, if someone has duly put in the work over a period of time and is entitled to a certain sum of money, it makes no sense to deny that person of the money. We should start to learn in this country to do what needs to be done at the right time. When you don't do that, the person goes to court, gets a court judgment, gets interest from the date when the money should have become due until the date the judgment debt is liquidated. And that is adding more money, more debt onto the government, which the government simply cannot afford. Two, people who engage in this sort of behavior should be made to face the repercussions of the activities. You cannot withhold people's gratuities, people's allowances, and pretend as if nothing is going on, it's business as usual. That cannot continue to happen.
From the Daily Trust, the United Nations World Food Programme has raised an alarm that 4.3 million Nigerians in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states will likely face severe hunger between June and August this year.
Thank you, Zibby. So this is very depressing news coming out from the Northeast, and this is as a result of years of armed conflict in the region, and as a result, millions of people have been displaced from their homes. People aren't farming anymore, and the available food resources are grossly inadequate to feed the people in question. So now we're facing cases of severe malnutrition, and people will then be forced to resort to selling their bodies or engaging in one form of crime or the other to survive. Now, the bigger question in all of this, the existing state governments in that region, what exactly are they doing? Is the World Food Program working with these guys, or have they attempted to work with these guys? What was the outcome? We have a National Emergency Management Agency at the national level, and some states have created state level agencies. What exactly are all of them doing?
All right, we're out of time, but I'm going to read a few messages. And this is from Olatunde. He says, If there's no, there is egg glut in the poultry business because supply outweighs the demand for a multitude of reasons. Why are the prices of eggs not reflecting this? Something smells rotten here. The Nigerians, all foreigners in general fleeing Sudan, can't be classed as refugees as they are not seeking refuge in the adjoining countries. They only want the right of passage to their various countries. And Ajayi says it will be interesting to see this document listing the achievements of the president's government in the last 8 years. The reality on ground that we see may be very different from what is included in that document. And Benito, all right, I see your message. But that's all the time that we have. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for listening. And special thanks to our analyst, Mr. C, for joining us this morning. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
You first. First Bank. You first.
The headlines, the stories.